In this video, we're going to start by creating a simple Unity script just to get familiar with the idea of how Unity code is written and how we can start with coding in C# through Unity. So to start this process, inside of the project section of your Unity project, you're going to right click and you're going to say create, and then under scripting, you're going to create a new monobehaviour. You can type any name into this monobehaviour. For mine, I'll just type in test. And then what I want you to do is double click on this script once it's been created. So just go ahead and double click. And when you do that, your script will load inside of your IDE that you have associated with Unity. In my example, I'm going to be using Rider primarily. You may have a different IDE. That's not a problem. You can feel free to use any IDE that you like. Now, before we start writing any code, I want you to get familiar with the way that the Unity code is actually structured in C#. I'm going to say this as if you don't have too much programming experience, just to keep things nice and approachable for beginners. If you have some programming experience, that's great too. You probably are familiar with a lot of these keywords already. So the first thing to talk about is that in C#, everything is created primarily as a class. So you see this class keyword a lot. For now, you can think of a class as basically a container for all of the code that you want to run. We'll talk a bit more about classes in more detail later, but for now, that will be sufficient. You'll notice this monobehaviour keyword, and I mentioned monobehaviour when we created the script, so let's talk a bit about what a monobehaviour really is. Basically in C#, there is this base class called a monobehaviour. It provides a whole bunch of different utilities that are very common for code in games to require. So for example, often you'll need code to run on every frame of a game. If you want to be able to do that, Unity provides a built-in way of doing this, which we're able to access through the monobehaviour. So when we say something is a monobehaviour, basically what we're saying is that it's going to use a lot of the common game functions like update and start that Unity provides for us. Now, the other important thing that we need in order for this monobehaviour to work is this using Unity engine keyword at the top here. Basically with C#, we can include different code from different places, and Unity provides us with a whole bunch of code that's really helpful for us to have. To tell C# that we want to use Unity's code, we put this using Unity engine. It basically will go and it will say, take all the Unity engine code and we're going to include it here so we can start to use it inside of this script file that we're already here. So that's basically what we've set up right now. We've set up a container that's going to hold all of our code, and that container is going to be using a bunch of different things from the Unity game engine. And let's talk about two of those things, the two things that are included inside of here, start and update. These are called event functions. You don't need to worry about that quite yet. We'll talk about that in future videos as well. But generally the idea is that these functions are going to run code, and they're going to run everything that is between these two brace brackets here. So everything between these two brace brackets will run when these functions are called. The idea of calling a function is basically when something happens, we may want to run a certain set of codes. So basically we can do something called calling that function. So we tell that function to run when we need it to actually execute its code. In this case here, these two functions are special. Basically, they will run at different times. The start function is going to run one time, and it runs when the actual script is first executed. So when the script first starts up, the start function will run. So everything in between those two brace brackets will run right at the start of this object being created. Now, update is a bit different. Update runs once per frame. So every single frame that your game renders, the update function is going to run. Typical game is going to run around 60 frames per second, which means that the update function would run 60 times per second, since every time a frame is created, the update function runs. Now, to understand these, we could try doing some basic coding inside of them. The first thing that I want you to be able to do is try to write something to the console. So Unity provides us with a console, and I'll just show you that over in the Unity window. So if I go back to Unity here, you'll see this tab for console. This console here, we can write things to it. It's very helpful for debugging and very helpful for just sort of getting started when we don't have anything visual inside of our game itself. So let's go ahead and see how we can print something to that console. The main way that we're going to do this, there's a few different ways that we could, but I'm going to show you a really basic way. We just type in print, and then in brackets, we put the thing that we would like to print. So for example, if I put in quotations, hello, the text hello will be printed to that console. It's important for me to put hello in quotations because hello is not a keyword. It's not like a piece of code, right? So for C# to understand that this isn't code, we put it inside of double quotes, so now C# knows that this is text instead of code. So that's great, we've got our code there. How do we actually get it to run in Unity? The answer to that question typically is that we want to attach it to a game object. Basically, when Unity starts up, it's going to load what's called our scene. So this is our sample scene here. It's going to load everything inside of this scene when it first starts up. And that can include things that we create ourselves. So in order to tell Unity to load our script and run it, what we have to do is we have to create a game object for Unity to load. So I can right click here, and since this isn't going to be like anything special, we'll talk about the different types of nodes and the different types of objects that we can build, but we're going to create a very basic empty game object to start. And I'm just going to name this game object the same as my script. It doesn't have to be, but I'll just do that for consistency. I'll call it test. And now I have a game object called test that will load when my game loads. Now the next thing I need to do is I need to associate this with my script. So if I go back to project, the easiest way to do this is you just take this test script here and I click and drag it over into the inspector of this game object. Now you don't have to do it this way. You can also do it through add component. You can say add component and then you can type in script. And typically there are different ways to be able to add different scripts inside of here. Probably the easiest way to do it is through this script item here. And then you can typically find your script inside of this list here. So you'll see this example here is the test script. I could include it this way as well. So whichever way you like, you can do that that way, right? Now from here, when I press this play button, what ends up happening is the scene loads. My test game object gets created, and when it gets created, this hello prints because this hello was inside of the start function. So it prints once when that game object is created, which is when our script starts running. So that's great. We got our code up and running. Looks like everything is working as expected. Let's try something a little different. Let's try running some code inside of our update. And I want you to see exactly how this update is running. So instead of update, I'm going to print update ran. We'll save that, and then we'll return back to Unity. When you save a change to a script, Unity rebuilds your script and updates it inside of the game objects that are using it. So you don't have to worry about clicking and dragging it back in. It's already there. It's already updated to the latest changes that you have made. From here, we'll press pray. And what you'll see here is that the startup script happened, right? The hello. And then you see update ran just keeps running, right? It's running every single frame. So around 60 times per second, we're typically going to see this actually running. So do you see how many prints of this update ran are actually happening? It's because that keeps running over and over and over again. And this is one of the key differences between the start and update, right? So it's just how many times that function is actually running and when it's actually running itself. So with that, you've written your first C# script in Unity. Congratulations. In future videos, I'll show you how to dive deeper into different things that we could do inside of these C# scripts to really get a good understanding of how we can write programs inside of Unity. So thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.